Hey everybody. It's Friday night, new moon. Here's the scene. Huh? That's the scene. You know, if there were as many people on this street as there are cars, it would be either like a party or a parade, right? There are always so many cars here, vehicles, huh? Physical vehicles, as opposed to the interior aspect of ourselves that these are embodiments of. These are functional realizations of vehicles. Now, the streets aren't actually deserted right now. There's a few people around. But I've seen streets that used to be packed with people on a Friday or Saturday night, like this one, have almost none. This tree, right here, yeah, that tree is bombarding the atmosphere with fragrance. I mean, it's like jasmine times 10. That thing is serious and beautiful. And there's something of the sunset, a phenomenon for which my neighborhood is named. But we're not so west that we touch the ocean. The sunsets here, however, are often quite extraordinary, if a little more distant than I'd like. So, as many of you are probably aware, I very rarely make videos directly in an urban setting. It's kind of not my gig. But that's all right. I can make it work. I'm very fascinated by dreaming. We have this word, it refers to something most of us very crudely understand. Someone just rode past me on a unicycle. And just, to keep it, to portray what's actually on the street, right? This is part of it. A long time ago, that used to be the internet. And I feel so fucking old saying that. In any case, I'm really interested in dreaming. And every once in a while, because I'm somewhat on a quest, right? But that quest is not rigorously delimited. I have wildly unexpected dream experiences. And thankfully, this morning was one such event. In recent, for me, my dreaming experiences transformed as I aged. And a lot of the more intense stuff happened when I was younger, but it was more there's more variables than just youth, right? been listening to people's conversations and seeing them on the street. Can you hear the mourning dove? Let's see. Where's that guy? Pretty sure that's a guy. Oh yeah, there it is. Let's see. Right about on that wire. I'm used to hearing that mourning dove there. Now you can hear a little traffic. There's a little bit of foot traffic here. It's not too deserted. It's funny how some people are responding more out of caution, some more out of fear. Some have a narrative, right, that they're playing in their brain like a map of the terrain. In any case, dreaming. It's nothing like this stuff. Well, the relationship to consciousness is inverted, right? This stuff here, yeah? This stuff is relatively continuous, relatively, like it's physically disambiguated. There's that unicycler and a few other things. So now I'm crossing the sort of major 4-lane street near my house. And it looks like that way, and that way. I'm sure you've seen plenty of streets full of cars. So the streaming thing, every once in a while, I manage to have an unexpectedly profound experience. And this morning, well, I don't even know how to put it. Each experience of dreaming is unique. It's at least as unique as it is, at least for me, amenable to being framed, right? To being collected into this group of experiences we call dreaming. So it has the general qualities of, well, even those are a little touchy to make a catalog of. But it seems trivial to say that every dream is an experience of dreaming, but it is. And each of those experiences have unique aspects. Even if a dream is a mere repetition, we are different each time we dream. So all dreaming is quite unique. But in my experience, there are those dreams which stand out so far, so dramatically above the others. That they very nearly demand that we invent another class of experience. Huh? And hopefully, if others have such experience, and I presume that many of us do, if not all of us, whether or not we are capable of remembering it and thus becoming conscious of our dreaming experience. Here are some people slacklining And this is a tree that I adore. This tree is incredible. One year they painted an orange ring around it, and I was terrified that they might cut this tree down. Another time I was in this park and I saw a very beautiful young woman near my age. Look at this incredible creature. I mean, this is the real thing. Yeah, this tree is amazing. I saw this beautiful young woman and I said to myself, I saw her in a different nearby location, and I said, wow, she is so beautiful. If when I finish my Tai Chi, she is in that tree, I'm gonna ask her to marry me. Sure enough, I finished Tai Chi. Guess what? She was in that tree. Another time from these trees over here, I mean, I've had some real adventures with animals here, adventures that bordered on dreaming. And those trees, from that branch of that probably sycamore, a crow launched itself in the upside down flying position and flew right over my head one day. And that's not the beginning or the end of that story. And here there used to live an incredible eucalyptus tree that when I first came here appeared dead for many years. I used to visit it all the time. And then one year it suddenly just leapt back to life. I liked to think I had something to do with that. Maybe that's slightly megalomaniacal. Here's the view of my neighborhood from here. It's pretty crazy. Although the camera really doesn't capture it. It's a thing you have to see with your eyes, right? The camera is not, it's just not the same. I was worried they took out this eucalyptus tree, but it fell. I talked to one of the arborists here. It came down in a storm, so they removed it. It makes me wonder if there might be some technology. It doesn't seem incredibly profitable for humans to engineer it, but a technology that could allow you to replant a tree. In any case, dreams. And I'm being very casual tonight, so my apologies for anyone who's expecting something a little more sophisticated. Though, stay tuned. Yeah, the stuff we call dreaming. Many of you will understand what I am talking about if I say that the position prior to the origination of a gesture or thought or idea or sentence or musical riff, right? That position before we collapse and disambiguate down to a specific product, that position is filled with kind of potential, right? It's incredibly fertile. It doesn't mean it will be fertilized and result in a product, but sometimes it will. And dreaming, I think, actually is the origin and corollary of the waking world minds that you and I are familiar with. And that's a fairly bold claim. Humans have learned it has a lot to do with memory and how it's formed and maintaining it and organizing it. But I think things are vastly more interesting even than that. dreaming has the capacity to form kinds of memory that have purposes our waking world experience would never imagine, let alone authorize or admit. So it creates this incredibly diverse, unusual, underlying aspect for consciousness to refer to that's so mysterious and sometimes alien that without it we'd have grave difficulty There are no conditions under which a raven would ordinarily allow me to approach it that closely. I was within like 2 feet of that raven. I'm sorry, the robin. I was so overwhelmed by the experience that I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, there's no like situation under which a robin would ordinarily allow me to approach that closely. Now, I'm going to take these earphones out because they're actually not connected to anything. And I can hear the world around me better. In any case, what I am suggesting is that our dreaming experience is not merely the origin of our structured memory. It allows us to structure memory and thus invent whole functions of relation with, instrumentalities of memory. Yeah? And it's precisely because dreaming is diverse and complex and sometimes bizarre and beautiful and mysterious and essential. It's because of these features of dreaming, I think. Well, my dreaming mind doesn't like the word because. It's really funny. The faculties with which we are capable of interacting with the physical world while we are awake originate in dreaming, I think. Partly, right? Their roots are in dreaming. Of course, the essence is the waking day, our experience over time, successful or failed attempts at physical interaction with physical things, right? I get that. I'm not dismissing it. But dreaming is so profound, I'm actually hesitant to say anything too specific about it. The power of the ambiguity in dreaming. The unique sophistication of its nuance. This is astonishing. And I think actually infinite. It has no limit. What will be limited is a similar thing to what is limited in the daytime. Our felt senses and orientations in the dimension of identity, meaning, possibility, threats, opportunities, so on. But last night I had a dream. Well, actually, I'm gonna, let's see, it was probably sometime shortly before 10 a.m. Today is May 22nd, the new moon. And this morning, I had a dream that outclassed everything. I only wish, got a spider web on me, I think. I only wish that my memory had been a little more crisp and functional, because this thing, it established a whole new class of dreams by itself, right? And it wasn't hypnagogia, and it wasn't hypnopompia, I don't think, although I don't know. I'd been awake through most of the night. I fell asleep sometime nearing dawn. And I had this dream where, I mean, it was really incredible. It was so incredible that, like I said, it established an entirely other class of dream experiences. Now, I've had a couple of these this year. In one of them, in a way, they all deeply involve new forms of life, right? Interesting cue, right? But yes, they all involve new forms of life or new ways of being human that I had never imagined before as even conceivable. And I've had some experience of this in my actual waking world existence, so I guess it's not surprising that something resembling it might arise in my dreaming. In any case, this morning it did. Here's where I am now. It's very difficult to put this dream into words at all, primarily because it took place entirely in a non-human mode. The other two dreams, in one of them, they were sort of science fiction-y, right? In one of them, there was a space station where humans could put on this sort of nanosuit that would transform them into another animal that was not entirely non-human, although some were very close to being entirely non-human. And there was a complex array of adventures that took place in that really strange context. And in another dream, there was a planet where humans had been there for 20 or 30 years. And of course, I'm not telling you the dreams, I'm just telling you some plot elements. The humans had been there for some time, right? Maybe 1 or 2 generations, maybe 3. And on this planet, all of the life forms were mind-alteringly symbiotic with humans. So it produced all these bizarre acceptations of human of the faculties of mind that humans can have. There was a small girl who could telepathically teach you 10 or 15 languages in a few moments. There were these sort of warrior people and bizarre healers and all kinds of things, and it was really exotic and incredibly realistic at the same time. But the dream that I had last night, this morning actually, was so unusual that in order to frame it, I just have to tell you about what it was for, sort of, or what took place, which was that me and a team of five people, males and females, I don't know the exact number, and it doesn't even really matter. That would be nice to know. We were somehow introduced, oh boy, this is going to be really difficult and maybe even embarrassing. We were introduced to a context in which an extremely complex vehicle that had many dimensions in which it could travel, not just space or time. Identity, organism, in dimensions we don't actually think of as traveling in, though certainly humans can understand the idea of traveling in the dimension of organism because we have this narrative, a reasonable one, that we are the evolutionary product of primate, ancient primates. So me and the team were introduced into this vessel that was, I don't have any experience of what it was located in. It wasn't merely located in space-time, but it wasn't located on the ground. We were introduced, and once we were introduced, we were inside it. And once we were inside it, movement between sections of the vessel was equivalent to slightly unpredictable yet similar transformations in form, identity, activity, way of communicating, meaning route for all of us. So like 3 of us would change maybe to one possible, oh God, this is so hard to describe. We were like complex science fiction function animals that were hyperbiomimetic and amechanical, and yet had capacities that exceeded those of ordinary machines, capacities that would exceed anything ordinary machines could ever do, which is the nature of biology, but it's not always apparent because we can select a mechanical hyperbole like computation or weightlifting, right? And you can build a machine to lift, well, most weights. In any case, as we traveled inside this vessel, we transformed. And there were people trying to teach us things, and there were people hunting us. And the people who were hunting us eventually caught up with us, but then they just taught us more about the unimaginably bizarre context in which we were having this adventure. And the unimaginably bizarre consequences of having this adventure. If there were humans in the dream, it was very early in the dream, and after that, what we were was not human. And it was so exotic that it makes all the ideas that humans have ever imagined of aliens seem trivially, trivially, clumsily crude. So we went through these transformations inside this vessel. We went to different sections of the vessel via tubes and elevators and things. And each time we changed section, we transformed. Sometimes all to the same thing, sometimes all to different things. And none of these things were even modestly human. They were all hyperboles of aspects of the combination of dimensions of identity, like shape, form, function, meaning, math, activity, character, identity. They were like these little localized physical hyperstructures of aspects that you'd only get if you were in a dimension that allowed you to see into the dimensions that we see only superficially. Yeah? And this was unlike any experience I've ever had. Very intense and profoundly weird and extremely difficult to remember. Like, I remember a few scenes from the dream, but because the context and the activity were so unusual, so unique, so novel, it was almost as if I didn't have a form of memory capable of doing anything, like of recording that kind of stuff, because it contained layers that I'm not used to seeing at the same time, right? I'm not used to experiencing at the same time as myself. And it's frustrating that my memory isn't working better, at the moment, because this is something really worth carrying a little bit for me. So this is where I am now. Now, recently, I've begun to wonder about wonder at the relationship between narrative and forms of memory that can be integrated to produce not merely minds, but faculties, new faculties. Faculties that we either had when we were children and lost, or could have developed but were never encouraged to. Huh? I think there are many senses that are essential to our humanity, which many of us, have become divided from. And when I say that, I'm not pretending that I live undivided, only that I remember and sometimes feel their diaphanous hint. It's great to hear the bird song more than motors. So yeah, this dream, totally alien. Integrated dimensions of meaning and identity that ordinarily in waking consciousness have to be distinct, and did that with essentially physical prostheses, or physical examples in the dream of changing into another kind of life form. That was crazy. And these life forms were only sometimes hominidal. They were, I don't even understand how to say it, the dimension that we ordinarily conceive of as relative to physical embodiment and expression and shape. In the dream, that dimension it did not have the same meaning. It had the meaning of form, purpose, identity, function, making. Yeah? And I wouldn't be surprised to discover that what I had an experience of was something like what it is to be, for example, an array of bacterial hypercolonies, right, that are all symbiotically linked and exchanging information, trillions of times per second, live at an entirely different rate of lifetime than we do. So that maybe, a month is one of our hours, and there's 30 trillion of them in a single human body, never mind the extended, right? But yeah, it was very super science fiction-y. In a way that was so far beyond anything I've experienced before that it pretty much establishes a new class, right? This thing's in a class by itself. And as I said, recently I've been reflecting on the relationship between narratives forming kinds of memory that are collected, that a person's collected inventory of those kinds, right, has a determinative influence on The forms of mind they can compose in relation with phenomenon, right? And the attendant faculties naturally emergent from that mind. And one of the things I find is that when we return dimensionality to our common human experience, when there are forms of ambiguity that are as meaningful in the right relationship as forms of deambiguation, right? As determination is. There are aspects of relation with ambiguity that can actually produce more value than disambiguation can. More degrees of freedom. And this is part of the essentially soul nourishing and spirit nourishing and heart nourishing and mind nourishing effects of art, songs, paintings, poetry, literature, dance, theater. It's getting a little dark now here. And soon again it will be time for dreaming. There is no book that will teach you what you uniquely carry. No, there's something better than any book could ever be. For a book is a kind of representation of dreaming, and thus it is the structured remains of the pure, undifferentiated potential that began the process. And that as yet undifferentiated potential and how it gently collapses toward identity, that's where the secret is alive. That's where you can touch it and it will recognize you and you will recognize it. That's one of the sacred origins of the mind, of consciousness itself. Now, I don't want us to worship dreams or take them seriously, but let us pay intelligent attention, yes? Let us pay intelligent attention, for here we have something at once influenced by the waking mind's familiar cultures and capable of completely departing them. And that's a very valuable doorway. Right? It's a valuable doorway. I don't necessarily believe anything anyone has told me about dreams, but I'm not I don't want my own relationship with dreaming or my ideas about it to be too thoroughly colored by those of experts. And maybe that sounds reckless, but it's not as though I've ignored the experts. What I'm saying is there's so much more. There's so much more. Yeah. And the phenomenon is not only infinitely complex, it's one of the few places we can authentically touch the before of the minds with which we experience and evaluate our waking world lives. And you could argue with me and say, well, it's not before, it's after. And I would say, maybe it's both. The before and after of our waking world minds. Mm-hmm. So yeah, in this dream, dimensions of activity and identity and meaning and all these things, they were uniquely recollapsed to expressions that were alive and that were alien, but they were not like any kind of alien thing I've ever thought of or encountered at all. And there were just the strangest features of being one of these multi-dimensional meta-organisms, right? I don't know what the fuck to call them. I could make up a I could make up a slippery word, right? In my normal waking consciousness if I'd done so beforehand, and maybe I will later. Yeah, the experience refreshed me because it was unlike anything that has ever happened to me before. I mean, it was a dream in the sense like this is something that happens while you're in a paravisionary state. And I think visions are a very distinct form of dreaming that are possible but relatively uncommon. At least in my world. With the departure of the sun comes ambiguity, the return of ambiguity. Shadows and shapes lose color and merge. That which was previously static might be seen to seethe or flow. And so it is with consciousness and the mysteries of dreaming that will never fall before our inquisition. Never. These vistas are infinite, and it's one of the things that keeps me fascinated by them. And by you. Bye-bye for now.